Episode number 693, Giver's Gain and Storytelling.
You're listening to the official BNI Podcast with BNI founder and Chief Visionary Officer, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the official BNI Podcast. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California, and I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the Chief Visionary Officer of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan. How are you, and where are you?
I have just recently been to BNI mainland China. Now, okay, it was
Wow.
by Zoom, but still, I was there. Wow. They are just doing amazing things. They actually had a kickoff just recently with over 200 members joining in one chapter. Blows me away. I never thought that would be possible. It's incredible. So mainland China for BNI is doing incredibly well. And that's who I visited recently. However, today I have a good friend who is on with me, and his name is Greg Davies. Greg is known as the Story Fella because he uses his passion for telling stories to help businesses and communities thrive, including BNI. After working in both large corporations and owning his own small business, he really understands that working hard is something that's unavoidable, but it's okay as long as we understand why we're doing it. I couldn't agree more. And if we surround ourselves with those people who inspire us to be better every day. Greg is a best-selling author. I think I may have helped him with that particular one. He's a multi-award-winning director. He did that on his own. And a corporate trainer and international inspirational speaker. Greg is not such a secret Disney fan, and he and his two daughters, it's their happy place. Greg, my friend, it is a pleasure to have you here. Greg is the co-author with me and Julian Lewis of Infinite Giving, the 7 Principles of Giver's Gain. Greg?
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to finally have you on. This is your first visit on BNI Podcast. I'm pretty confident it won't be your last. So you're known as the Story Fella, and you really had some amazing stories that you contributed to Infinite Giving, which really helped make the book. Talk a little bit about the 7 Principles of Giver's Gain and the stories that are within.
So the book was just an amazing project for us, and it came from trying to codify Giver's Gain, and it was a huge undertaking for Julian and myself, and of course we came to you, and we didn't even want to go close to the core value and philosophy of BNI without including you, and it was just a wonderful experience from start to finish. But one thing that we knew right from the start was that we were going to have some pretty substantial stories in there. One thing that I learned very early on in my journey in BNI was the fact that there are ways of growing people's businesses, our members' businesses, and the referrals that they receive, and also the groups that they're in. And like you just said, one in China launching at over 200 members and getting more people and keeping people for longer. But wrapped around every activity that we do is telling stories, and it's like if BNI was a block of wood and we were taking slices off, it would be a line that runs right the way through it. It's telling stories is so important that we knew that Infinite Giving had to include some amazing stories. And there were many that didn't make the book, but I think we got a good cross-section of real kind of BNI member life experience stories in there, and some inspirational, motivational stories. And one of my favorites is the one we open the book with, which is a story of James Harrison, the ultimate giver, who dedicated his life to helping helping others. And I won't spoil the story, but it revolves around one of my.
Give us 30 seconds on it, because it is a powerful story.
Well, it was an interesting one for me because I have two phobias in life. One is spiders, and one are needles. And this story is about giving blood. Now, luckily, the nurses weren't dressed as spiders; otherwise, that would have been a total nightmare for me. But it tells the story of how James Harrison, who's an Australian citizen, was in a car accident in his late teens, and his life was saved because people donated blood for his operation. And as he lay in the hospital bed recovering, it kind of hit on him this gift that had been bestowed on him by strangers that he would never meet. So he decided that he would give back. He decided that he would give blood.
But he had unusual blood, didn't he?
He had amazing, he had a very rare genetic pathogen in his blood, which led to a vaccine for newly pregnant women, which they believe has now saved over 1 million lives. So
that's just incredible.
That's
incredible. And just so everyone knows, he gave 1,173 blood donations during his lifetime.
Wow.
He really did. And what was amazing about the story, yes, it's a remarkable feat. I mean, he's such a humble man. He's on his achievement. He was quoted in saying, "Well, I hope someone beats it," because that means that they've dedicated their life to helping others, like I have. But the reason it was the first story in our book is because it really did encompass giver's gain. So he went out of his way to help others, but the vaccine that he developed, or that scientists developed from his blood, was administered to his daughter, and it allowed him to have grandchildren. So it really was just a beautiful kind of cyclical nature of how giver's gain works, and the story summed it up just absolutely perfectly.
And he's a great example of giving with no expectation, because he certainly didn't expect that giving blood would help his daughter years later.
No, absolutely not. And it's one of our principles. In fact, it's our second one. So, giver without expectation. It's he lay down on that bed. He actually to repay the gift that he had received. So we mentioned in the book that yes, we're making a huge deal of what James had achieved, but the kind of unsung heroes of that story were they can't really tell how many people gave blood initially, but it would have been between 4 and 5 people would have given the amount of blood for his initial operation, and those are the real heroes. Because without that, he wouldn't have realised just what a gift was bestowed on him, and wanted to repay that. But you're 100% right. He had no expectation, and there's some brilliant news footage out there, and of mums with newborn babies coming over in like little pink romper suits, and he gets poked in the eye at one point, which I think is just a beautiful image. And you can see he's very embarrassed by it. He's very humble. I mean, he sums up principle number 6 for us, which is to stay humble. And for someone to be walking around, he's described as a man with a golden arm.
Yeah.
And for someone to be walking around having saved over 1 million lives.
All right. So, Greg, we can go one of two directions here. We can either talk about why stories are powerful, or we can maybe share another story or two out of the book. I'm good with either one. What would you like to do?
Oh, well, I think we got to go for why stories are powerful.
Okay.
It's
Let's give some tangible stuff that would help our members understand, because that's a powerful story. Give some more information about why stories are powerful.
Well, the first time I realized how powerful stories were was when I was I was managing a group on the south coast of England. The group was called Worthing Rocks, and it was the first group in the region of West Sussex ever to go platinum. So it was, and this was on their journey to platinum. So they just got some really good members in, and on the visitors event, I would run a feature presentation. So I'd take 10 minutes and explain how BNI works and how BNI could work for the people in the room. And on their first kind of visitor day experience on their journey to being 50 plus members, which is what the level of platinum is. I did this formula where you could work out the amount of relationships in the room, and I still remember it. It's n squared minus n over 2 will give you, where n represents the number of people in the room. And I had a flip chart, and I felt like some kind of Harvard scientist going through it, and I was working out all these figures, and at the end of it, I had a few smiles and nods, and a number of people joined the chapter on that day. And then a few months later, we had another visitors event, and this fantastic marketeer, a lady called Louise Stevenson, who runs Tiger Marketing. She said, "Oh, Greg, great to see you again today. You're here because of Visitors Day?" Yeah, I'm here because of Visitors Day. Brilliant. So you did that horrible formula last time. You won't be doing that again, will you? And and of course, what had I planned to do? I'd planned on on doing the exact same thing again. So what I had to do, and people have said to me, "Well, you shouldn't have changed it. It worked. You got Louise as a member. You shouldn't have changed it." But probably in my naivety, and luckily for me, I did change it. And I thought about the lady who lived down my street, who, when we were growing up, my parents were always the person to go and speak to if they needed anything. She knew the best mechanic, the best heating engineer, the best insurance guy, the best car salesman. And I realized that's what chapters were. And I kind of weaved it in with a bit of nostalgia. And after 2 or 3 minutes of the presentation, I had the majority of the room smiling and nodding along about playing soccer in the park and neighbours with large dogs. And I realised right then that what stories do is rather than telling people what they need to do to make a decision, they influence people.
Yeah.
It allows them to come to their own conclusion to make the right choice.
Yeah, very true. I mean, there's the old saying that facts tell, but stories sell. And I think that is a truism. And it's one of the ways that I think that you explain why to people, because people don't care about how until they understand the why. And when they understand the why, then the how becomes a lot easier. And the way to get to the why is through an effective story, in my opinion. Would you agree?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Well, Greg, it was a pleasure working with you on Infinite Giving. We're working on another book on the legacy that you leave in life. And I love that concept, and not sure when that'll come out, but we're working on it. And you had some great contributions to this book. For anyone that's interested in getting some information about Greg, you can go to the storyfella.co.uk, and that's Storyfella, FELLA.co.uk. Greg, thanks for being such a great co-author on Infinite Giving, and thanks for being on BNI Podcast today.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity in both aspects. Thank you.
Over to you, Priscilla.
Okay, great. Well, that was wonderful. I loved that story. It was fantastic. I think that's it for this week. Thank you for the great information. The sponsor for this podcast is Ivan's Inner Circle. Go check out the great content available at www.ivansinnercircle.com, where Ivan has assembled a variety of interesting topics for you to learn about and participate in. Thank you so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we look forward to having you join us again next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI Podcast.